Any claims made by the viewer without watching the entire video will not be considered. I request you to watch the entire video to understand what I am trying to say before making any conclusions. So this is a most technical engine oil change video. This video is divided into two parts. The first part is the technical part and the second part is the DIY part, in which I will show you how to change the engine oil of your engine. So among many kinds of oil that is available in the market, I thought to try Bosch engine oil, which is quite unpopular in the market. So this is Bosch Josh 40 Prime engine oil. The grade of this oil is 20W50. I'm using 20W50 because I'm going to use this oil in Bajaj Pulsar 180, and the company recommends, or the manufacturer recommends, 20W50 engine oil for it, for Bajaj Pulsar 150 and 180. You may or may not know the meaning of the term 20W50 or 20W40 or 5W30 or whatever it is. So the term preceding W, that is 20 in this case, is the viscosity of oil when it is cold. Cold means at temperature of minus 17.8 degrees Celsius. And the term after W, that is 50 in this case, means the viscosity of oil when it is hot, that is at 100 degrees Celsius. So in this case it will be 50. This vary according to the usage and according to the manufacturer recommendations. Bajaj has recommended 20W50 for Pulsar, so I am using this oil. This is a mineral oil. This is neither synthetic nor semi-synthetic oil. So honestly, after changing the oil, I did not feel much of a difference. The difference that I saw was because of a new oil as compared to an old oil. That will be visible if you do any oil change. If you do any oil change, it might be of any company. When you change an oil, old oil with a new oil, whichever company it may be, there would be a difference because a new oil has not lost its property as compared to the old oil. So whenever you change an oil, whenever you change your old oil with a new one, you will find a difference. The difference is because you're coming from an old to a new oil. In this case, you're coming from an old oil to the new oil. That is why you're getting the difference. The smoothness or so-called crispiness in shifting gears is because you're changing an oil. That it is not because you're changing to a company or something. Even if there's a difference after changing from one company to other, it is very difficult for you to tell that difference. The difference that a normal person can tell is the difference when he sees the changes from an old oil to a new oil, which is what I saw too. But the interesting fact I want to tell is that when I changed the oil, that is without riding the bike, that is 0 kilometers, I got that change because of an old to new oil transaction that I've told earlier. But after I rode my bike for almost 30 to 40 kilometers, I felt some extra smoothness and some extra crispiness, you may call, on shifting gears. So I thought, why is this happening? On researching a bit, I got to know that as soon as we start using a new engine oil in a bike, its property goes on decreasing. Like any new oil has certain properties, and as soon as it is being used, its property degrades. It start degrading. In this case, when the oil is new, it has some particular viscosity, and over the course of time, its viscosity decreases or its thickness decreases. So now, why was that happening? The case is when I rode it off for 30 to 40 kilometers, it started feeling smoother. It started feeling crispier. The gear shift was crispier. Why did that happen? So my bike is an old bike. It is not a new bike. I have done almost 10,000 kilometers with it. So the engine has carbon deposits all over. For example, say that when a new engine is built, it has some fixed clearance, that is the gap between two parts, and over the course of time, due to carbon deposits and carbon buildup, that clearance reduces. For example, if the company has made the valve clearance of 2 mm, for example, but over the course of time, due to carbon deposits and all, the clearance might have reduced because of carbon deposits, and it could be either 1.8 mm or 1.6 mm or 1.9 mm. So because of that carbon deposit, the new engine oil, which is a brand new engine oil, which has recommended viscosity. So now company recommends an engine oil based on a new engine. Like if this engine oil, this 20W50 engine oil was designed for a bike Pulsar 180, it was the thing that was in their mind is that this oil is being used for a bike that has clearance of 2 mm, for example, in this case. So now, but but the clearance has reduced to some amount because of carbon deposits. So what was happening in my case is, what I think is, because of the usage of this oil, the viscosity has reduced a little bit as compared to a new oil. For example, when the oil was new, it had some difficulties going to those places which has carbon deposits and all. But now, as the viscosity has reduced a little bit, it can flow over that areas more easily, as it has its thickness has reduced, and it can flow more easily. So yes, it can flow easily over those components, because its thickness has reduced by some amount. If you see this graph is of an experiment of a research paper, where a test was conducted on three samples. In all the three cases, the engine oil used was same. The first case is the property of new engine oil. Second case is the oil that has clocked 600 kilometers, and third case is when the oil has completed its life cycle, that is approximately 6,000 kilometers. So as you can see the graph, the viscosity increases over the period of time. Now my case lie in between the first and the second line, because it has been only 40 to 50 kilometers when I observed this change. So if you are thinking that as the time passes by and the viscosity of oil decreases, the smoothness of bike will go on increasing or something, that is not the case. That extra smoothness when the oil property has degraded to a very little extent, not drastically. The oil has property has reduced by very little extent. It is not like the carbon deposit. If this is the clearance and carbon deposit had come half the way or something, carbon, there's thick layer of carbon only. So by reducing a viscosity by a little bit or thickness by a little bit, the performance has increased to a certain extent. So this change is not drastic, and over the course of time, when the viscosity and thickness will go on decreasing, its property and its lubricating properties also decrease, and we won't feel that same smoothness that we are feeling right now. A major difference that I also saw was that increase in top speed. Earlier I was doing 105 kilometers per hour with my bike, and now I can do 109 to 110 kilometers per hour. This is not because of this oil or something. This is because I upgraded from an old oil to a new oil. Why did this happen is because when we are doing top speed with a bike or car, uh, the engine is running at its highest RPM. On that condition, the oil is stressed a lot, and it has to work at its maximum level to give optimum performance. So an old oil cannot give that level of performance that is required by a bike at that RPM and at that temperature and everything. Because it does not have that property, it has lost all its property. It does not have the viscosity, the lubricity, everything that is required at that RPM. But when I'm using new oil, I'm not talking about this oil, any new oil, it has that viscosity, it has that lubricity, it has that everything that is required at that temperature. That is why there's an increase in this top speed from 105 to 109 in my case. It may vary, or it may not be visible in your case also. But this is only because of change from an old to new oil. So one thing I want to tell here is that if you want to see the difference between an old oil and a new oil, what you can do is that you can ride your bike at higher RPM or at top speed of a bike with old oil and new oil respectively. In both the cases, you will feel the difference. In all the other cases, you would not feel the difference. But in these cases, you will feel the difference, because at that RPM, the oil is being used at its maximum level, the maximum performance. It is giving it maximum performance. So old oil would not be able to give it maximum performance. You'll definitely feel the difference. So I have done almost 150 kilometer with this particular engine oil, that is Bosch oil. And if you ask me that if is there a huge difference between Bosch engine oil and Bajaj engine oil or some any other specific engine oil, then you will not be able to tell that difference, because that difference will not be significant. Moreover, if the bike is new, then you may or may not see the difference. But in this case, my bike is not new, and I have already done 10,000 kilometers. So spotting the difference is very difficult. Though it was fine, this is normal oil and it is fine. Unlike Bajaj, which claims to have an oil drain interval of 10,000 kilometers, this oil does not has any claimed interval or something. Earlier, before using this oil, I was using Bajaj engine oil in my bike, and I got it changed at approximately 7,500 kilometers or 6,000 kilometers or something. And I had to change it after 3,500 kilometers, because the oil has literally lost all its viscosity and everything. Right now, I have old Bajaj oil in this. I have drained and kept it into this. As you can see, it seems to look like water. It is like water. It has lost all its viscosity, and they have claimed to have a service interval of 10,000 kilometers. So the interval depends on the riding condition also. If you are stressing out the engine, that means if you are riding at higher RPM and lower gear, then the oil is being used more aggressively. It gets to higher temperature at higher RPMs, so it loses its viscosity and its property at earlier stages, and the drain interval decreases. But under any condition, the bike is not gonna go to 10,000 kilometers or something. As in my case, I have to change it at 1,500 kilometers, so maximum it will go is 5,000 kilometers or something. One last question that you may have is that why did I change from Bajaj to Bosch engine oil? The price of Bosch engine oil is much cheaper as compared to Bajaj engine oil. Though that Bajaj engine oil is not an excellent oil or something. Moreover, I wanted to try a different engine oil. That is why I went for this engine oil. If you ask about the drain interval of this oil is not mentioned like Bajaj, which claims to have an oil drain interval of 10,000 kilometers. This does not show any drain interval or something. Moreover, if you do more frequent oil changes, then the carbon deposit that happen to occur in your bike will reduce, because as whenever you are changing your oil, the carbon, all the deposits come along with the oil as you're draining it. So every time you drain your oil, you are also draining that deposits that have accumulated in the oil, that have accumulated in the engine, and it comes out with the oil. As you can see in this case, the oil, this is the old oil, and it has turned entirely black. This is because it's not just the burnt oil, it also have the carbons and all other deposits in it. So a regular oil change, even before the drain interval, will help to remove the deposits from the oil. And if you do that, you would not need to add some extra chemicals to remove those deposits. Like we used to add chemicals like engine flush and all, that is used to remove the carbon particles or carbon deposits. But when you're making frequent drains and frequent changes, you need not do that step. You need not do that process only, because this is sufficient to do that. And one last thing, uh, I've seen some people using synthetic oils when the manufacturers have recommended mineral oils for their. Okay, using a synthetic oil is not a bad idea. So when you are using synthetic oil in these bikes, that is Pulsar, Apaches, Hero Hondas and all, you are probably doing that to get some extra smoothness, or I don't know why you're doing that. Maybe because of extra smoothness or higher drain interval or something. But if you are getting, if suppose you're getting higher drain interval, instead of 3,000 kilometers or 4,000 kilometers with this, you are getting 6,000 kilometers with synthetic oil. Then and you are spending 1,000 rupees for that as compared to 320 rupees for this. So in that 6,000 kilometers, you can get two oil changes with this, or any oil. I'm not talking about this Bosch oil. You can get two oil changes if you're using any mineral oil, instead of going for that and having a little bit extra drain interval. So if like you're spending 1,000 rupees for that and you're getting 6,000 kilometers of drain interval, you can spend 600 on this and you will get 4,000 plus 4,000, 8,000 kilometers of drain interval. Moreover, every time you change the oil, that is from old to new, you will feel a significant change as compared to synthetic oil, because any oil will not offer that level of performance at the end of its life cycle. But if you are changing it for extra smoothness or something, then there's no such reason why the synthetic oil should provide extra smoothness in an engine that is designed for mineral oil. And why do you think that it will provide more smoothness or extra smoothness? There should be some reason for that. No, there's no reason that it will provide extra smoothness or something. The only reason why we're using synthetic oil as compared to mineral oil is that synthetic period maintain its property over the entire lifetime, over the entire drain interval. If it is made for 10,000 kilometers, it will maintain its property for that 10,000 kilometers, whereas this will lose its property at the end of its life. The only difference is this. It's not that if you're using synthetic, you are getting higher performance or you're getting higher, more smooth or something. It is just that it will maintain its property over the entire interval. This will not maintain its property and it will lose its property at the end of its life cycle. So to summarize all the points of part 1, mineral oil is not a substitute for synthetic oil if the manufacturers have recommended synthetic oil for the particular vehicle. We can only upgrade and we can never downgrade. Synthetic oil is an upgrade from mineral oil. if the manufacturers have recommended synthetic oil, we cannot use mineral oil. Second point is synthetic oil as compared to mineral oil of same grade only provide extra consistency throughout its life cycle. Mineral oil will lose its consistency at the end of its lifetime, but synthetic oil will maintain its consistency throughout its life cycle. Third point, manufacturers spend millions of rupees in R&D before recommending a particular grade of oil for a vehicle. So don't just change the grade of your oil because your local mechanic is asking you to do so. You might have seen the terms like API, SL, SM, etc. in the bottles of the engine oil. The term API stands for American Petroleum Institute, which sets industry standards for commercial and passenger vehicles. The term after API, that is SL in this case, it may also be SN, SM, etc., is the quality of passenger vehicle motor oil. The current highest standard is API SN. First we will have SL, then SM, then SN. So this SL, SM, SN is what determines the quality of oil. It's not that if you're buying synthetic oil and mineral oil that determines the quality. This is what determines the quality of oil. And mostly in newer vehicles, most of the manufacturers recommend API SN as their engine oil. So this is what determines the quality of oil, that is SM, SL, SN, etc. Not whether the oil is synthetic, semi-synthetic or mineral. So if the manufacturers have recommended API SM as their engine oil, we can never use API SL. We can always use higher grade, that is API SN. We can never degrade the oil. Same manner, if the manufacturers have recommended synthetic oil of particular grade, we cannot use mineral oil. And I'm not saying that we can use mineral oil. We can only upgrade. But the thing is, we usually do not get benefited if we upgrade from the manufacturer's recommended grade until and unless we are doing that for a specialized application. In the part 1, the claims that are made about the clearance part is not backed up by some research paper or some scientific experiment. This is what I think personally, and you may or may not agree with the same. So it is not backed up by any scientific research. Manufacturers spend millions of rupees in R&D before recommending a grade of oil for their vehicle. So don't just change the grade of the oil because your local mechanic asks you to do so. For example, they may say that ये पतला होता है, ये मोटा होता है, this is thick, this is thin, and etc. and all that. You only have to use the oil that is recommended by the manufacturer until and unless you are not doing that for a special application. So let's start the DIY part. So first step that we need to take is to check the quality of oil. For doing that, you will need to open the oil filler cap. Now take a screwdriver or any long object which can be dipped into the oil sump. This bike does not have a dipstick, so we are using a screwdriver. Now put a little bit of oil between your fingers and rub it. If the oil is old and worn out, you will feel some coarse particles, which are residue of various moving parts of the engine. This is not the only way to check the quality of oil, but will definitely give you an idea. If you want to check the quality of oil professionally with all the parameters involved, you can use a oil refractometer to check the quality of oil. Now when you know that your engine needs an oil change, crank the engine and let it idle for 2 to 3 minutes so that the oil gets warm and it will be easier to drain the oil completely. Locate the drain plug in your bike. In Pulsar 150s and 180s, this is the position of drain plug. Place the drain pan under the drain plug. Now open the drain plug with the required socket size. As you can see, the quality of oil that I was talking in the earlier part of the video. As you can see, this is just after 3500 kilometers. Let us drain the oil completely. Let it sit for almost 5 to 10 minutes until the oil stops to drip, so that you know that there is no more oil in the oil sump. You can also tilt your bike a little bit so that the remaining oil can also be drained off. This drain plug, unlike an ordinary bolt, has some magnetic properties which attracts the dirt, that is the magnetic residues that is circulated within the engine, so that the metal particles do not run throughout the engine with the oil. So it is very necessary to clean this drain plug before you install back into the engine. Put the plug back and tighten it. Clean the residual oil from the surrounding area. Now open the filler cap and fill it with new oil. After you have filled the oil, put the cap back and tighten it. If you want to check the level of oil, you can check it from here. But many bikes have dipstick which will help you to show the level of oil. This bike does not have a dipstick. Now I will run the bike idle for 2 to 3 minutes so that the oil gets circulated everywhere inside the engine. Now you can fill the old oil back into the bottle and can give your old oil to local mechanic, or you can recycle it by yourself. Thank you for watching.